Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhara Parampata Kirita Jushtam Api Utmangam Nanamen Mukundam Savokaro no kurute saparyam Hare lasat kanchana kanchanova Bhara parampat kirita jushtam Api utmangam nanamen mukundam Savokaro no kurute saparyam Hare lasat kanchana kanchanova. Synonyms: Bharaha, a great burden. Param, heavy. Pat, silk. Kirit, turban. Jushtam, dressed with. Api, even. Uttama, upper. Angam, parts of the body. Na, never. Namet, bow down. Mukundam, Lord Krishna, the deliverer. Savo, dead bodies. Karo, hands. No, do not. Kurute, do. Saparyam, worshipper. Hare, of the personality of Godhead. Lasat, glittering. Kanchana, made of gold. Kankano, bangles. Va, even though. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupāda ki Jai. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden, if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. Purport. As stated herein, that there are three kinds of devotees of the Lord. The first class devotees does not at all see anyone who is not in the service of the Lord. But the second class devotee makes distinction between devotees and non-devotees. The second class devotees are therefore meant for preaching work, and as referred to in the above verse, they must loudly preach the glories of the Lord. The second class devotee accepts disciples from the section of the third class devotees or non-devotees. Sometimes the first class devotee also comes down to the category of the second class devotee for preaching work. But the common man, who is expected to become at least a third class devotee, is advised herein to visit the temple of the Lord and bow down before the deity, even though he may be a very rich man or even a king with a silk turban or crown. The Lord is the Lord of everyone, including the kings and great and emperors and men who are rich in the estimation of mundane people, must therefore make it a point to visit the temple of Lord Sri Krishna and regularly bow down before the deity. We'll just pause here for a moment because it's a long purport. I think we'll just break it up into a couple of parts. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesha Dharine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we can see that the first part of the purport is pretty much explaining the three classes of devotees. It is talking about the three levels of devotees. Nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction. They have various texts covering the same topic, and it's an important topic to discuss. So I'll start by discussing the Uttama-adhikārī devotee, the first class devotee. And we have also discussed this in the past, so I won't go into the details of explaining what these devotees do, but I'll just narrate a few pastimes, and through these pastimes, probably we can understand how to distinguish between an Uttama-adhikārī devotee, a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee, and a neophyte, right? So, firstly, talking about Uttama-adhikārī devotee, there's a verse in Bhāgavatam in 11th Canto, 2nd chapter, verse number 40. It says, Evam vrata sva priyanama kirtya jatanurago dhruta chitta ucce hasati yathoro ditiroti gayati unmadavan rityati loka bhaya. It basically says that when one chants the holy name of the Supreme Lord, one comes to the stage of love of Godhead. Then the next step is devotee becomes fixed in his vow as an eternal servant of the Lord. And then he becomes so attached to the holy name of the Lord that he forgets everything else. His heart melts with ecstatic love. He laughs very loudly, he cries, he shouts, sometimes he sings, he dances like a madman, for he is indifferent to public opinion. So Uttama-adhikārī is a stage where a person becomes a madman, and he is completely indifferent to the public opinion. Does not matter what people think about me, right? He becomes completely unaware of what the public thinks. There are so many beautiful pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu towards the later stage of his life. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Jagannath deity, he did not see wood, he did not see the deity form, he did not see temple, he did not see devotees. All he saw was in Jagannath form, all he saw was Krishna in Vrindavan. And immediately what happened to him was he fainted, he was crying, he ran towards the deity. One might think externally, the people might think that he has gone mad, which is true in one way. But internally, he was experiencing a direct union with Lord Krishna. And that is what he was experiencing internally. So Srila Prabhupada says that this is the highest form. It is the highest form of devotional ecstasy. And this is called Mahabhav. And in such a state, the purport talks about a devotee cannot preach in such a state. Right? Hence, it is said that a person needs to come down to the level of a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee to be able to preach. And a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee is the one who is well versed in scriptures. He understands the Shastras really well. He can convince others also of that Shastra. But an important point is he is able to discriminate between the favorable and the unfavorable. He is able to avoid non-devotees. He is able to preach to the innocent. And he is able to not tolerate the blasphemy against other Vaishnavas. So he is able to protect all of that, right? So that is why an Uttama-adhikārī devotee who is completely a madman cannot see anything other than Krishna. He sees you, he's going to see Krishna, right? So he's not able to distinguish between favorable, unfavorable, devotee, non-devotee. But a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee is able to clearly do that. That's why we see it is mentioned that a Uttama-adhikārī devotee sometimes has to come down to the level of a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee to be able to preach. Again, I'll give you a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu example, how he comes down to the level of a Madhyama-adhikārī devotee. So this is from the time he spent in Banaras, Varanasi, when there was a strong hold of the Mayavad philosophy. And we have discussed in the past that Mayavadi philosophy is filled with like lots of impersonalist sannyasis. It's impersonalism. And we know that it is completely hostile to bhakti, especially when it comes to chanting, deity worship. It's completely hostile. It's unfavorable at all levels. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Varanasi, he did something that can shock externally, right? He did not mix with Mayavadis. He only chanted Hare Krishna. And he taught Vedanta to the people who actually understood that through bhakti. So he clearly was able to distinguish between devotees and non-devotees. Now what happened because of that was this angered Mayavad sannyasis. Now we are getting into the pastime in a little bit more detail, which will now explore the neophyte devotees as well. right? So, because Mayavad sannyasis were completely angry at this point in time, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not even associate with them, now close associates and devotees of Mahaprabhu, Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar, who were residents of Banaras then, they had complete faith in bhakti, but they were not expert in philosophical debates. They had complete faith, but they were not able to argue back. They were not able to refute the clever arguments that the Mayavadi sannyasis used to put forward. The Mayavad sannyasis used to mock Mahaprabhu. And they used to say, this sannyasi does not study Vedanta, he is sentimental, he is misleading people by chanting and deity worship. So clearly, devotees, would get angry at such comments if being made. So Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar were really upset, and they felt the pain when they heard criticism of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But they had faith in Mahaprabhu, that Mahaprabhu was supreme, but they lacked the spiritual strength to defeat the arguments. So what they thought was they are not able to tolerate the offense, but they are not able to stop it as well. So a Kaniṣṭha-adhikārī is a devotee who had strong faith, who is emotionally attached to the Lord, but cannot defend the philosophy. He lacks discrimination. He lacks preaching ability. So we can clearly see in the case of Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar's position that they had strong faith, they had loyalty, but they lacked philosophical strength. So what did they do? They asked Mahaprabhu to take action. Again, an important point I would like to make over here is that neophytes, when I'm talking about Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar, who are close associates of Mahaprabhu, it is not a criticism. It is just a stage of development because they later go on to become great devotees of the Lord. So even neophytes is a stage of development. We are all neophytes. So it is all a stage of development. It is not a criticism. So when Mahaprabhu was approached to defend bhakti, at first Mahaprabhu said, do not associate with Mayavadis, simply chant. Because association with Mayavadis is dangerous, and Mahaprabhu obviously understood that. But later, because Mahaprabhu had great compassion, he said, okay, let me go and defend. So he met Mayavadi sannyasis, he defeated their philosophy, he established bhakti as the conclusion of Vedanta. So we can see that how Mahaprabhu, who is an Uttama-adhikārī devotee, he descended to the Madhyam platform to be able to preach. Right? So through this incident, through this pastime, we can see that Mahaprabhu was able to establish bhakti. He was able to establish the real meaning of Omkar. He was able to establish why chanting is the essence. And because of this, Mayavadi sannyasis accepted him. They chanted Hare Krishna and they glorified devotional service. So this in turn, what happened was validated Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar's faith and Mahaprabhu's position as the Supreme Lord. So we can see that faith alone is not enough, but faith must mature into knowledge. That's why we read Srīmad Bhāgavatam. So Srila Prabhupada uses this pastime to teach us that Kaniṣṭha-adhikārī protects faith, Madhyama-adhikārī defends and preaches, and Uttama-adhikārī sees Krishna everywhere and empowers others. Right? So Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhar teaches us sincere faith without philosophical strength becomes helpless. And therefore, we must study Srila Prabhupada's books. It has been, let's continue reading further in the purport because then it will highlight the next important point, which can again be experienced through this pastime. So I'll continue reading. The Lord in the temple in the worshipable form is never to be considered to be made of stone or wood, for the Lord in his Archa incarnation, as the mentioned herein before, this realization of the presence of the Lord in the temple is made possible. Sorry, I missed a sentence. His Archa incarnation, as as the deity in the temple shows immense favor to the fallen souls by his auspicious presence. By the hearing process, as mentioned herein before, this realization of the presence of the Lord in the temple is made possible. As such, the first process in the routine work of devotional service, hearing, is the essential point. Hearing by all classes of devotees from authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srīmad Bhāgavatam is essential. I'll repeat that sentence. Hearing by all classes of devotees from the authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srīmad Bhāgavatam is essential. The common man who is puffed up with his material position and does not bow down before the deity of the Lord in the temple, or who defies temple worship without any knowledge of the science, must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of the ocean of material existence. A drowning man with a heavy weight on his head is sure to go down more swiftly than those who have no heavy weight. A foolish puffed up man defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him. But when he is in the grip of God's law and is caught by some disease like cerebral thrombosis, that godless man sinks into the ocean of nescience by the weight of his material acquisition. Advancement of material science without God consciousness. Again, advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the human society, and so one must take the heed of this great warning. Again, I'll just pause here. So we can see that the point highlighted here is that one must focus on hearing by all classes of devotees, but from authentic sources. It's clearly mentioned here. There is a Srila Prabhupada pastime where once during Janmāṣṭamī, it was past midnight after the Aarti. So obviously everyone has fasted, everyone was hungry, all the devotees. Srila Prabhupada was not tired at all, though he was that one person. He was working tirelessly throughout the day. Right? He was fasting, cooking, he had long temple programs, but still he was not tired. Once the midnight Aarti happened, Srila Prabhupada, everyone thought, okay, it's time to eat now and then sleep and rest up. But Srila Prabhupada said to the devotees, let's read from Krishna book. And everyone was like, oh, now we have to read from Krishna book. Anyways, one person starts to read from Krishna book. They began reading. And they began describing Brahma's prayers to Vishnu. Right? So that the first chapter is going on. Time passed, the first past chapter was finished. Everyone yelled out Jai, thinking that this is where we are stopping and now we will get to eat and sleep. But Srila Prabhupada said, continue reading further. So now everyone continues to read further. That person continues to read further and describes Krishna's appearance in Mathura. Right? And as they are reading that, the second chapter finishes and then everyone yells. Everyone's dozing off, falling on each other. But the moment they say, this ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport, the last line, it said, everyone yells out, Jai, thinking it's over now. And Srila Prabhupada says, next chapter. Right? And then they start to read about Krishna's childhood pastimes in Vrindavan and Yashoda Mai's affection and then Maharaj's joy and the times passing by. And devotees are thinking Janmāṣṭamī is over. And Srila Prabhupada kept on saying, continue reading, continue reading. 1 hour, 2 hours, deep into the night, Srila Prabhupada is listening very intently. Srila Prabhupada is sitting up straight, listening up intently. For each one of us who have been a part of Janmāṣṭamī, who've been doing different services, by midnight, we all know how we become. We are slouching. We are just ready to go home and take rest. Right? And often we come late for Srila Prabhupada's appearance day the next day because we are so exhausted. But here is Srila Prabhupada sitting up straight absolutely straight and listening with great intent, right? And he's listening very carefully, completely absorbed. Because for Srila Prabhupada, this is not a program, this was association with Krishna. So we can see the importance of hearing. Does not matter who is it's a devotee, who the devotee is who is talking about Krishna. If it is coming from authentic sources, like Krishna book, like Bhagavad Gita, like Srīmad Bhāgavatam, absorption is a must. Absorption should automatically happen. And that shows our level of bhakti. That shows our level of devotion. That talks about what level are we at. And we will often see that we are at the lower stage of neophyte devotees. Right? Forget about Madhyam and Uttam. We'll often find ourselves at the lower level of neophyte devotees because our absorption is not there. But if we are engaged in hearing with utmost care and attention, then what does Bhagavad Gita says? Then there is Punya Tirtha Nisevanat, which means they're cleansed of all vice by service. If you are hearing with utmost attention, and if you're hearing topics of Vasudev. A good way, to measure the position of a Vaishnava is, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the position of a Vaishnava can be tested by seeing how good of a touchstone he is. How good of a touchstone he is. Touchstone as in Sparshmani. By seeing how many Vaishnavas he has made during his life. A Vaishnava should be a touchstone so that he can convert others to devotees as well through his preaching. Even though people may be fallen, just like a hunter who is considered lowest amongst men, there are so many so-called advanced devotees who sit in a secluded place for their personal benefit. They do not go out and preach and convert others to Vaishnavas. So Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says they are not sparsh stones, sparshmani. Sparshmani is a devotee who is able to go out and preach, who is able to convert others to Vaishnavas. Right? So a Madhyama-adhikārī Vaishnava can do that by his preaching. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised all his followers to increase the number of Vaishnavas. Vara dekhe tara kahe Krishna upadesh. Wherever you go, talk about Krishna. And if you're talking about Krishna, it is bound to happen that people will convert, people will become devotees, because it is a matter, everyone's devotee is a matter of igniting that spark. Right? And following this instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we can see that his disciplic succession, everyone became a spiritual master. Mahaprabhu made the process very easy. One can go everywhere, anywhere, preach the instructions of Krishna. And it is a duty, forget if we should preach or not, it is a duty of every Vaishnava to travel and preach. So because Bhagavad Gita does not belong to a particular country, right? It belongs to everybody. And this is a test of a Sparshamani, following in the footsteps of Narad Muni, who also does the same, who has got the same service. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport gives a very nice example. He talks about a very powerful analogy. He is talking about a drowning man with a heavy weight on his head sinks faster. Drowning man with a heavy weight. And it talks about wearing a silk turban. And what are these silk turbans? Obviously, we don't wear turbans. What are those silk turbans for us? Our education, our wealth, our power, technology. Right? Talking about technology has, nuclear technology has one of the highest achievements in today's time. Right? Same science can produce electricity to serve society, and same science can produce atomic bombs also. Right? Last night there was a firing at Bondi Beach. So we can see the same nuclear technology is doing so much devastation as well. So when education, power, technology is not used with God consciousness, as the purport points out, millions died instantly at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yesterday, about 11 people died at Bondi Beach. 12 are in hospital, critically injured. So we can see that so many technology without God consciousness is useless. Srila Prabhupada said, your advancement is simply how to kill nicely. That is advancement. So instead of lifting humanity, this knowledge made humanity drown faster because it's heavy head. It is drowning faster, just like a man with a heavy weight on his head. So technology in a way is a heavy weight on the head. On the other hand, if you look at George Harrison, right, he had massive wealth, he had great singing abilities, he had global influence, and he had cultural power in a way. But he was chanting Hare Krishna, he supported devotees, he funded temples, he made donation, and he used his fame to glorify Krishna. Srila Prabhupada immensely loved him. So his wealth did not drown him. It became a boat. Right? It became a boat. So we can say, Bhagavad Gita says in chapter 16 that ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodam cha sanshritaha mam atma para deheshu prada vishwanto bayashu taha. So probably I didn't get this verse correct. The last word is bayashu yakshaha. So ahankaram, blinded by ego, balam, strength, darpam, arrogance, kamam, lust, desires, krodam, anger, right? So when demoniac abuse Krishna, what happens is, so Krishna who is present in their bodies and the bodies of others. So blinded by egotism, strength, arrogance, desire, anger, the demoniac abuse Krishna. And that is what happens when we misuse the power that Krishna has given us. Material advancement without God consciousness increases our ego, increases our anxiety, increases our bondage. And that's why Bhagavatam warns us very strongly. This verse is especially talking about bowing down the head. And why is bowing so important? Because it breaks our false ego. It reminds us that, okay, I'm not the controller. I'm bowing down before you because I'm not the controller. I'm nothing. And it helps us to increase our humility. And what is humility? Humility is to admit that I don't know the way. Pranipatena. It means to actually bow down, pay obeisances, and say, I don't know the way, you know it, so please be my guide. That is what it means. So spiritual journey that all of us are on, it's a very essential journey. But we have to move inwards because soul is inside and we are the soul. But we are not aware that we are the soul. So we direct our consciousness inward and realize that we are the soul. And once we realize that we are the soul, we realize that Krishna is seated there in our hearts, who is able to guide us. And then we are able to take, and then spiritual masters who come along our way, they know the way and they provide us the way of how to reach the ultimate goal. Right? Krishna says, Manmana bhav madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. So think of me, become my devotee, and offer obeisances. So even a rich man, a king, a poor man, does not matter what your material position is, one must bow down. Srila Prabhupada says, the Lord is the Lord of everyone, even emperors. Lord does not distinguish, right? So Lord does not distinguish. I think it's 7 o'clock, so I might just pause over here and we can continue reading the purport tomorrow. But it communicates, it's a very insightful purport which talks about 3 classes of devotees. It talks about preaching, how Madhyama-adhikārī, Uttama-adhikārī comes down to the level of Madhyama-adhikārī. It talks about the importance of hearing. Does not matter from whom you're hearing, but we have to hear authentic sources. So it focuses a lot on hearing, and then it focuses on how a heavy load on the head will make us sink faster. So we must get rid of those load, or we must use that load in the service of the Lord. So at this point, if you have any corrections or questions, please feel free to ask them now. Thank you so much. Granthara Srīmad Bhāgavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupāda ki Jai. Okay, then. Have a wonderful Ekadashi. Have a wonderful spiritual day. It's time to go inwards. And we will again see you tomorrow. And we will continue reading the purport tomorrow. Thank you so much. Grantraj Srīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupāda ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.